Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of To the Men After Me podcast. I'm your host, Neeko Williams. This is the letter to the boys that will become men in the generations that follow. Y'all, I'm excited because we've got a really special guest host with us today. I've got my good friend, Anna Hopper.
Hi.
Anna, say hello. Tell the listeners who you are, where you're from, and how we met, if you can remember.
Oh my. Okay, my name is Anna Hopper. I'm originally from South Carolina, but have been in North Carolina for the past 16 years. Still have family in South Carolina, but I would call North Carolina home because I love it. And I feel like just thinking, even just about like my spiritual life, like I have grown so much and there have been so many spiritual markers in my life that have come while being in North Carolina. How I met Neeko, the first time I met Neeko, I don't even know. You were a college student?
I was a college student, yeah.
But other than that, I don't remember.
So Anna Hopper is the wife of our lead pastor
Yes.
at Mercy Hill Church. You guys planted the church in 2012.
2012.
But you got to Greensboro in 2011?
Yeah, no, we were in Greensboro. So we launched fall of 2012, but we moved in May of 2012. So we were here a few months before we launched.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know if everybody who listens to this podcast attends Mercy Hill, is familiar with the story, even is familiar with church planting. I'd love to just hear a little bit about that journey of like, you guys were not church planters. You made a decision. We're going to plant a church and you move your whole lives.
Yes.
12 years later, here we are.
Here we are. Yeah. So in 2005, Andrew and I got married. I was trying to think when we got married. 2005. We got married and we moved a year after that to Southeastern Seminary for Andrew to go to seminary. And while we were there, we became part of the Summit Church, and they have a massive heart for seeing the gospel just go throughout the world through church planting. And so they approached Andrew about church planting, and at first we were both kind of like, I don't know about that. We had been part of a church plant that was not great. When we were in South Carolina, we were really young and in college and didn't know what we were doing. Andrew was doing youth ministry and I was teaching school at the time. So when they first approached us, we were like, Andrew even says, the church planting is for the people that can't get a real pastor job.
I want to be a real pastor.
Yes,
That's what he says.
That's what he says. Yeah, so it's like, no. But then we just really began to pray about like what we were going to do after graduation, after he finished seminary. And the conversation just kept coming up of, man, maybe we should plant a church. Other doors were closing for us. And so he went back to the guys at the summit and said, all right, yeah, we'll do it. But the thing is, Andrew and I are not like big city people. So back then, church planting was like mega urban or bust. And so we were like, we'll go plant a church, but it needs to be somewhere that we feel like we can be used and like we can relate to the people. Looked around North Carolina, long story short, we landed on Greensboro. And we moved here in spring of 2012. The church started in our backyard in a house that we were renting. And it was, I was teaching school full time. Andrew was church planting. My sister lived with us.
Wow. I don't think I knew that.
My sister lived with us. She had graduated college, didn't know what she wanted to do. And we were like, you can come live with us and take care of our 2 small children. And so I worked full time as the sugar mama in the church planting world. Yes, it was phenomenal. And so, that was 2012. And the Lord has been so gracious and so kind. And we have just seen a mighty work like here in the Triad. We've been able to plant 5 churches out of Mercy Hill already. More to come, which is really exciting.
Yes.
So that's just kind of the church planting journey in a nutshell.
Awesome. I really appreciate you for sharing a little bit of that story. It's been really cool. I've been a part of the church. I joined the church in 2015. And yes, we met at Mercy Hill in college ministry. And I remember the first time I heard Anna Hopper speak, I was like, who is this lady?
Oh my.
Who is this? But I wanted to have you on the podcast because I was telling you on the phone, I was jogging. I was jogging and I had Ruach in the stroller and I was jogging with him and I just couldn't help but remember all of the stories of like a lot of the girls in the college ministry when I was in college ministry, leading college ministry, a lot of those young women, they often would say, I would run with Anna Hopper, and she had a baby in the stroller. And so all of a sudden, it just clicks with me like, oh, I got to get Anna on the podcast. We got to talk about just this whole idea of like, yes, children, they do change your life, but they don't stop it. And I think that you know this. I watch your life, and I just want to, me having a child now, I just wanted to even talk a little bit about what that has been like. How did you come to this idea or this knowledge? Like, okay, yes, our life is different now, but it doesn't mean we have to stop.
Yeah.
What do you? Yeah.
I think that came from when you're young, you have no kids, you're running 100 miles an hour. When we were in seminary, we would say yes to everything ministry-wise because we didn't have children. And so we had a lot more bandwidth. We had a lot more time. And I never thought like, oh, I'm going to have kids and all this has to stop. I knew it would look different, but I knew that it wouldn't stop because I knew that's not what God had called us to in ministry. And I think even not just in ministry, but as Christians in general, and just the opportunities that the Lord gives us. But I really saw this modeled when we were in Raleigh. I had a mentor and she had 4 kids. They were all elementary school kids. Wow. Her husband was the executive pastor's wife at the summit. Wow. And I asked her one day, hey, can you mentor me? And she was like, I mean, I don't know exactly what mentoring looks like for you. She's like, but my kids go to school. I'm home during these hours on these days, getting laundry done, cleaning my house, cooking. If you want to come over, come. Wow. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'll be there. Or it was during the summertime, all her kids were home. Hey, we're going to the pool. Why don't you come and join us? Wow. And so her modeling for me, I have 4 kids. She had 4 kids. Her plate was really full, but it was more life on life. Like, come alongside me. Like, run hard with me as I'm following Jesus. That, like, stuck out huge for me. Wow. To, like, ministry didn't stop for her. Yeah. It looked different. Yeah. But it didn't stop.
Okay, let's go back a little bit. Yeah. Before you meet this phenomenal, incredible mother, what was your perception of having a child or having children before even this experience with this woman?
Yeah, I don't even know. I feel like I always wanted to be a mama. I'm like, Andrew and I had kind of a rocky start to even having children. I had several miscarriages. Wow. And so I feel like when I got pregnant with Hattie Joe, our oldest, it was like, okay, I didn't have this big perception of what parenting was going to look like, I guess. Okay. It was, my parents both worked full time, so I knew like, okay, that's maybe how it's going to have to look. I never dreamed of being a stay-at-home mom. I think, side note on that, like the Lord gives people different capacities in the way that, and the things that they can handle, and that is totally fine. I think you have to be completely confident in the way that the Lord has wired you. Sometimes that's going to look like stepping outside of your comfort zone. But at the same time, I feel like the Lord has given me a very high capacity with things. And so working full time, having kids wasn't how I thought we were going to live our life anyways. So yeah, I didn't have this grand picture of what parenting was going to look like. I don't know.
Did you like, before you had kids, did you anticipate being able to, take children along with you? Like this concept of children coming along with you. Did it come from this woman that mentored you, or did you have that example?
I mean, when we got pregnant with Hattie Joe, Andrew was leading the young professional ministry at the summit, and that was on Thursday nights. It didn't start till 7 p.m.
Good night.
Yeah, I know. And I was like, I mean, for us, it wasn't a question of, am I still going to be a part of it? It was, I'm going to be a part of it, and Hattie Joe will just come along with us. So I think I had told you, I remember I would teach all day long. Go pick up Hattie Joe from the babysitter's house. We would run to the food line to get all the groceries for like that evening, go to the setup for the ministry, have the ministry, not get home till 10 p.m. And then wake up and go teach the next day. And it was like, that's just what we did. Yeah. And I loved it. And so it was just this idea of, just because you have a child doesn't mean ministry stops for you. It's going to look different, but it doesn't stop. Yeah.
I think one of the things that like everybody always says, anytime you're pregnant, everybody gives you all this advice, And one of the things that kept coming up was like, Neeko, you're not going to be able to do all the things that you're doing. And I was doing a lot. Yes. I'm still kind of doing. My wife is over there. She's making the faces, still kind of doing a lot. And it just kept getting this idea over and over and over. You're not going to be able to do as much as you could, as much as you would. And, I mean, to an extent.
Right.
They're right.
Yeah.
But life does not stop.
Life does not stop.
I think that was one of the things that, like, I had in my mind as I saw some of my friends, some of the people around me getting pregnant, and it just seemed like life paused. And I was like, no. I got too much to do.
Yeah.
God has given me too much to do.
Yeah.
And so, like, I really, as I saw you and I would see other people who actually did this well, like, there is a category of, no, my child can come along with me. And that was, like, really life-altering for me.
Yeah.
But let me ask you this. Why do you think that there's such, or if there is, I think that there's a negative perception about having children, especially in our culture today. Why do you think that is? Where do you think that comes from?
I think because we have a very self-centered culture.
Oh, okay. Go there. Go there.
I mean, if you you asked me. And so I think, it's like, people always say, don't have kids until you're financially, stable. You're not going to be financially stable, And so and people, our culture is really pushing the idea of it's your career, it's what you want, it's like all these things. And so people just get tunnel vision of like, it's me and what I want, And so instead of thinking in the book of Psalms, it talks about our children are meant to be arrows that we are given the responsibility to shape in, to be sent out into the world. Y'all, that is a privilege. That is a huge job. And so I think culture has it completely backwards of the idea of culture is very self-centered. You have kids, there is no, you realize how self-centered you are when you have kids, but I think all of that shifts to seeing like, no, like God has given us an incredible mandate when we do have these children. Fill your quiver full of them, and then, oh my goodness, we have 4 children right now, and just the idea of thinking that one day they're going to be shot out from our home, and just to see how God is going to use them is just exciting.
That's cool. Now, one of the things that you mentioned in our culture is like the reason why people don't want to have kids or there's this negative perception is because like we're selfish. I think that's right. I think you hit the nail right on the head. I think though one of the things our culture has done has maybe swung a little too far because like what you're talking about is like, yes, when you have a kid, you realize this world's not about you anymore. You know what I mean? And so I think maybe it's gotten in our culture's head like, okay, I'm gonna have a kid. My life's not about me anymore. And so like, it's all about the kid,
Yeah.
And I think that goes, maybe that swings a little too far the wrong direction of like, well, you're still a person,
right.
You still have good works that God has created for you to walk in, and, and I just that's one of the things that I'm learning. Like Ruach is a big part of my life. It's something that I'm called to, like you're saying, I'm called to shape his mind. I'm called to see him grow up to hopefully know and love Jesus. That's a big part of my role. But that does not put what God has gifted me to do to the back burner or to the side. Right. And I think that might be a little bit why I feel like our culture is kind of missed it a little bit.
And too, I think, so many, God created the seasons for a reason. And I think about that even in our own lives. When we had one child, it was easy to keep running 100 miles an hour and just bring Hattie Joe alongside of us in ministry. 2 children was fine. 3 children, it's a lot, but we did it.
Yeah.
And now we have a 4th child who has special needs. And so it has looked different. And I think we have to be open-handed with the idea of saying like, yes, I know God has given me these desires, these giftings, these callings on my life, but they're going to look different in different seasons of life. So maybe I'm not running as hard and as fast as I can. I think about when we brought Faith Ann home from the hospital. Tiny little bitty baby. I could not keep serving on Sunday mornings right at the beginning. Right. So I was getting there to, be a part of a service, but that was it for a season. Sometimes I think we can let those seasons last a little too long because we get comfortable in those seasons of like, man, it was really nice just to go to one service, and to just get everybody out the door for one service. But it's like, no, I had to personally, if I'm being completely honest, after a few months be like, no, she is completely capable of being strapped to me for a service, going into kids for a service, that kind of thing. And even up until, a couple of years ago, I would serve during second service because I never knew, like, okay, am I going to have to leave a little bit early because of her? So I think it's being open-handed and being willing to say, yeah, I'm going to continue in ministry. I'm going to continue serving. I'm going to continue, chasing these passions that the Lord has given me, even though it might not look the same exact way, like you were saying.
Yeah. When you think about bringing your children along, you got 4, one with special needs. What are some of the ways that you kind of think about structuring your life so that you can bring your child along, your children?
Yeah. So I think early on, I have such fond memories of when we first planted Mercy Hill. We're meeting in a clubhouse, having to, haul stuff in and out every single week. The trailer is parked in our yard. My kids were helping me clean the kid toys throughout the week to get them ready for the next week.
Yes.
They were the ones helping us take the boxes every single place. They were the ones running around doing snack cleanup, eating all the snacks after church. So I think about that, and they have some great memories of that, Now their ages are 14, 12, 9, and 7. And I think it looks different. My 14-year-old, she serves every single Sunday in kids ministry.
Yeah.
I think that comes from seeing us serve. My 12-year-old son, he serves with me. AP serves with me on Sunday mornings, which is such a joy. We do guest experiences. And he, at first he stood right there with me the whole time. And now he is like doing his own thing, greeting people as they're coming in, just living his best life. But I even think about things that we host in our home.
Okay.
When we have missionaries over, when we have staff team over, when we do anything, it is a family affair. Anytime our doors are open for people, it is not just Andrew and I hosting these people. It is our children are a part of that as well. And helping them to see, like, man, this is a privilege that we get to open our home to people. So I don't think it has to look like a Sunday morning serving opportunity. I think it can look like we've hosted City Project kids, students living with us.
Yeah.
And what that meant was our kids had to give up their bathroom for a summer.
Wow.
So it's like seeing different opportunities that they get to come alongside us to serve.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
There's a pastor. I don't even know who it is, but he's a pastor now, and he talks about how, like, when he was a kid, his dad, who was also a pastor, he said his dad was just as good as, like, coming down into his world as he was bringing his children up into his world. And he said, I think that made all the difference in the world. It wasn't like this separation between, hey, I'm dad now, I'm pastor now. It was like, I'm your dad, I'm also your pastor, but I want you to see what I do when I do it.
Yeah.
But let's talk about, like, limitations, okay? Because children do limit you. Like, that's where all of the root of all of this is.
Yes.
Children do limit you. I think that there's even scriptural ideas that come out of, Paul's actually talking about marriage, but he says, like, when you get married, like, your eyes are now, you have a different kind of focus. Your focus is split. When you think about how your children have maybe even limited what you were able to do, what comes to your mind when you think about that?
I mean, I think, I have a privilege now of staying home. So my schedule is a little bit different during the day. One of my children, he's homeschooled. Okay. But there is limitations in the sense of, I can't go have coffee meetings in the evenings, because my children have sports things in the evenings, or we have family dinner, so I would say that's definitely a limitation. And so that's where, circling back to the beginning, thinking about my mentor, Jen, she really showed me, hey, what are the things you're already doing that you can invite somebody alongside you in? So, like, talking about the running, So it's like, there's a college student. She's like, hey, I'd love to start meeting up. Great. I go running or walking every single Monday morning right after I drop Faith Ann off at school. If you want to meet me, come on, let's go.
Wow.
So I think you just have to really see, like, okay, there are limitations. Like, I can't go out late at night, or not late, I can't go out at night having coffee or meeting people for dinner or things like that. But I can do things that I'm already doing and invite people to come alongside me in that. Cool. Yeah. Because too, my hands are full with 4 kids, being a pastor's wife, all of that. And so the idea sometimes, if I'm honest, is like, it's daunting to think about, like, adding more things to my plate. So it's like, okay, like, where do I already have open spaces or things that I'm doing that people can come run with me, That's cool. Yeah.
Now, what are some markers maybe that you are coming up against a limit? I think this is an important way to, for you personally, but like also as you know, this is a podcast that's aimed at young men, and I think it's good to have some of these in their back pocket. As you know, maybe they don't have kids yet, maybe they're not, maybe they're in high school, whatever. But like when you started to realize, okay, I'm coming up on a limit. How did you recognize you're coming up on a limit, and then what did you do?
Yeah, I think this has just been within the past couple of years for me. I feel like where I love to say yes to things. I'm do a very bad job at saying no. I'm getting better at saying no. But where I realized that was Faith Ann was in preschool, so I had from like 9 to noon to run as hard as I could, meeting with people, doing all the things, you know. And then I realized about 2.5 years ago that by the time I picked her up, I had about an hour before I'd start picking up all the other kids, and I had nothing left in the tank. Because I had been saying yes to so many things to cram into those 3 hours, those few days a week that she was in preschool, that I had nothing left to give to the people that God had entrusted me with in my own home. And so, like I said, I'm not good at saying no. And so to have to like really pull back from things was hard for me. Because I love meeting with people. I love like pouring into young moms or just like young people in ministry or whatever it is. But to say like, you know what? God has given me these 4 lives being my kids to steward and to steward well, and giving them the leftovers is not stewarding them well, or not being available when Andrew needed something, or those kind of things. And so I think when you see those markers of like the things that God has given to you, like entrusted to you to steward, you're not stewarding those things well, then there's some things that you need to take off the plate. You know?
That's
and
good.
maybe it's for a season, maybe it's not, you know?
That's good. Now I want to turn this part of the podcast kind of aimed towards those young men, or even anybody else really who's listening. What are some ways that they can begin to even structure their lives now, so that by the time they start to have kids, it's not such a huge transition, or it's not such a whirlwind of how life was versus how life is? Like, what are some ways that you can think of right now that a person can structure their life?
I mean, first of all, it's just recognizing your life's going to change, you know, but it doesn't stop. There's a shift, but it's not a stop. And so, I mean, I think even now, just thinking about like, okay, what are those things you're saying yes to versus those things, like, because you can say yes to a lot of things, but one time somebody once told me when you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. And when you say no to something, you're saying yes to something else. And so realizing like, okay, what are those things that I'm saying yes to now that are causing me to say no to other things that I maybe need to shift a little bit. So I don't know. I mean, there's things, I think it's just having the right mindset. I don't know that it's necessarily a scheduling thing as much as it is like understanding. Because I would say, honestly, when you don't have kids, run as hard and as fast as you can, chasing after those things that God has given you a passion and a desire for, a gifting for. Because those things are going to look different. Once you're married, you know, once you have those children, like, so if you're single, like, run as fast and as hard as you can. Because you don't have that for forever, you know?
One of the things I actually think about is a part of your story was you hung out with people who had kids.
Yes.
You were engaged in the lives of this mother, this mentor figure who just showed you what life was like.
Right.
I would say that's probably like the biggest thing I would suggest is like maybe through the church relationships, like be as connected to a church body as you possibly can. Have a mentor. Because it's, you know, those relationships, your community of people, they're going to be the ones that hold you up when you have that baby.
Right. Oh,
like, we got a chance to experience that in such an incredible way through the baby showers and the people who are like willing to like watch our baby, you know, like, hey, and they're always like, we'll watch your kid, we'll watch it. But guess what? Those relationships don't come just because we had a baby.
Right. They were formed beforehand.
Yes.
I think, and you can even think about that like in the business world. People have mentors, people they look up to that they want to be like, you know, once they're like a CEO or they're like thriving in the business, whatever it is. And so, I think you're exactly right. Like finding those relationships early, you know.
If you are interested in learning more about what it means to find a mentor, check out an episode called Discipleship is Not Mentorship Only. It's one of the previous podcasts on the episode. I even include a couple of ways that you can find and ask for a mentor. So y'all check that out. But thank you. Yeah, that's some really good advice. Yes. I really appreciate that, Anna. Anna, do you have anything else you might want to communicate about what it means to have a child, what it means to be a parent as a follower of Jesus Christ, along the lines of having a child changes your life, doesn't stop it?
Yeah, it totally changes your life. It does not stop it. And it is the greatest joy and blessing. We just baptized our third child last Sunday. And it has been a journey with him. But just like the absolute joy, like Andrew and I said Sunday morning, we're like, this is the day we have prayed for. Like, I mean, our first 3 children have been baptized. They're walking with the Lord. They love the Lord. They love the church. They love people. And it's just like an absolute gift from the Lord to have that. And so I think, I had no expectation or idea of what it was going to be like to be a mom, but it's like really fun. Your life changes, but my life has not stopped. And I would say my life is more full now than it has ever been. I feel like the Lord gives me ministry opportunities that I would never have dreamed of. And so, it has shifted, but it has not stopped. And that's like such a gift from the Lord.
Well, Anna, this has been such a great conversation. I really do. It's blessed me. I know it's going to bless the people that are listening. Super grateful. We'll have to have you on again.
Yeah, we'd love it. That'd be awesome.
This has been another episode of To the Men After Me podcast, the letter to the boys that will become men in the generations that follow. We'll see y'all next week. Peace.